Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
It's not a bad question, Bert.
Inside the junk hole.
Sometimes that is better.
You eat chicken on Thanksgiving?
It just tastes so damn good.
Wolfman's got nard.
The opening credits were kind of cool, though, right?
Here's Johnny.
When the wolfbane blooms,
Thou art the one.
Star Child.
You are not gonna die from a shit.
What the hell did we just watch?
The All-American Spookshow podcast.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the All-American Spookshow Horror Podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm joined here with Donnie.
Hey.
Will.
Hey.
And the Professor Smoke.
Hello.
And today this is going to be the last show of 2021. We're going to be talking basically kind of the year in review. Like, these are the movies that we watched and enjoyed throughout the year. We'll have some recommendations and the ones we loved, that you should watch, and the ones we didn't like as much that you should avoid. I'll go ahead and add now, just kind of a teaser ahead here in that'll be a few weeks from now. This will be on January 17th. We're going to be watching one of the movies from 2021, and that's Malignant. That'll be on episode 91. So that's one that we've been wanting to get around to pretty much, or at least I've wanted us to get around to ever since that came out. So we're finally going to get around to that in, 3 weeks from now, as you hear this episode. That'll be episode 91. So I just wanted to put that out since we're going to be talking about it here today on this episode. But before we get into 2021, we need to go back and review a little bit since all four of us are actually here. And we didn't do this on the last show, so we saved it for this week. We needed to step back a little bit and talk about a few movies that we've done leading up to this where all four of us weren't there in the room, so we don't have all the ratings and stuff for it. So we're going to go all the way back to episode 81, Hellraiser from 1987. And Will, you were on assignment that day, so you weren't able to be with us. So I guess we'll get your thoughts on that and your star rating and a kill count if you've got a number for that on Hellraiser.
My star rating, I'm probably going to go a 1.5 on this one.
Wow.
The whole like torture sadomasochist thing is just not anything I'm into. Like it's just kind of hard for me to sit there and watch. I didn't enjoy the movie just kind of overall. Like the story, if it would have been a little faster, maybe the actual story would have interested me. But even like with that, I mean, it kind of reminded me of Jesse James and Frankenstein's daughter, because it was just
oh, come on now.
Jesus Christ.
There were long panning shots that just went on forever.
I can get with you on
that. And I know in Frankenstein and Jesse James, I know that it was there because they were filling time. And this was trying to, I guess, build intrigue, but it just didn't work because I guess I just wasn't into the subject matter of the movie.
Jesus wept.
I was like,
when he
damn,
found out this movie
changed it, huh?
I'm not, I guess, knowing your sensibility now, we've been doing this long enough to where you kind of get a feel for what everybody thinks about stuff, but I am kind of surprised that you didn't like it that much. And how dare you, sir? How dare you compare this to Jesse James meets Frankenstein's daughter in any way? I can get behind the weirdness of Clive Barker is not for everybody, but yeah, it is what it is. You've made us look bad because Smoke and I gave it 3.5 stars. And Donnie gave it 3.25, so that means we must be into sadomasochism, and you are not. So there you go.
Well, and I know this is like a weird thing, but like there are some movies that I can't sit there and watch. Like if they're based upon like a stupid lie, right? I know this is weird, but for instance, the School of Rock. I cannot sit there and watch that movie. Like, it was based on a stupid lie in the first place. So it's like, this is ridiculous. I can't get into it.
Anyone could have seen right through this if you were just using common sense.
Right, and I get that that's a comedy, but I don't know. Yeah, so if I don't buy into it, it's really hard for me to finish a movie.
What did you get a kill count on this one?
Yeah. I came up with a total of 8.
So that takes us to the next episode where we watched. That was our Thanksgiving special, episode 83, Into the Dark. We went back to that Hulu series, Into the Dark, with Pilgrim from 2019. So Smoke, you were on assignment that week.
Yeah.
I think you were on vacation. I don't know, one of your various luxurious vacations you take. You weren't there that week. So what do you say? Star rating, and then we'll go through your gore score there. And I'll also tell you when you get to the gore score, we made predictions on that episode before that. Or on that episode, I'm sorry, of what you would think the gore score was. So we'll say those first before you give it. So, but yeah, your star rating and your thoughts on Pilgrim.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I haven't listened to that episode yet. I didn't want anything to influence.
Okay, yeah.
My view.
Fair enough.
I don't have no idea if I gave the gore score or anything. So yeah, we'll see how that matches up.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the movie, Into the Dark. So what is the comparison that we have so far? Is Crawlers.
Yeah.
We forget what episode number that was that we did Into the Dark Crawlers. So it's going up against that as far as like, okay, is this going to be any better or worse? Or I mean, could it get much worse than Crawlers? And by the way, I don't remember I think my rating might have been half a star.
On Crawlers, yeah. On a re-rating, yeah, you gave it half a star. That one, I'll go through it since you mentioned it. Donnie, you gave Crawlers a quarter of a star on the re-rating. Will gave it 3/4 of a star. Smoke half a star, and then I'm the only one that gave it 1 star. So that's the bar. That's Crawlers.
Well, this movie, like if you're judging it by, first of all, let's talk about the technical aspects of it. I guess it was better than Crawlers as far as the acting wise or whatever. I thought the acting was fine, but overall, it didn't impress me. It didn't hold my attention, so much so that I was like cleaning the house while I was on in the background. I was doing some house cleaning. I went to get a drink and whatnot.
Yeah, a lot of drinking.
Like, yeah. So it didn't. I'm not saying that it was any worse than Crawlers because it's hard to get worse than that. And I think that might have been my worst rating. I think I even gave Home Sweet Home maybe even more of a rating than that. The movie, this didn't hold my attention at all. Like I said, until it got to the end. Like also, if a movie can have a lot of gore going on, that could hold my attention if it's got splatter and stuff that's at least keeping you pulled into it in some way. Like, oh yeah, that was a cool effect, or that was and the first part of this movie didn't really have that going either for it. But where I kind of perked up was as it got closer to the conclusion, because that's where they stacked all the gore. So I didn't really get down with too much of the storyline or whatever. And like I said, I was kind of cleaning it up. But then I started perking up near the end, like, okay, but also what the weird thing was, this movie it was kind of trying to, take everything seriously. But when it did get to the gore, it kind of interjected humor into it, I guess. Because there was you remember the vomiting blood scene?
Mm-hmm.
After the 8 berries.
Yeah.
That was pretty gory, but I couldn't help thinking of the vomit scene in Stand By Me, or the vomit scene in, I think, Monty Python's Meaning of Life. Because, they kind of bent over and you can tell that it's like a hose.
Yep.
Like a bottle or whatever. It's like those vomit gags in like Stand By Me. So I thought about that whenever they were doing it. So I didn't know if they were going for humor in that scene a little bit too. But then I definitely realized they were going for humor whenever they're in the conclusion a little bit further down, where the dad's severed head was on the table, as like instead of the turkey, it was like the dad's severed head, right? Mm-hmm. And they splatter off, and there's the head, and then there's a scene where they use the head as a weapon, bashing him with the head, the severed head.
I remember that, yeah.
Yep. Oh, all these
things.
It's almost like you've listened to the episode. I'm telling you, all these things were like same things we said and pointed out. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. I don't know, because it was this weird juxtaposition of like trying to take things seriously with the violence or with everything going on, and then like interjecting this weird humor in those parts. And then the music too was kind of weird. I thought it was like, okay, there's a scene where all this is near the conclusion. I mean, there was like a folk song playing, like it might have been a folk song you would have heard during pilgrimage or whatever. And then the next, like a gospel song, and then the next scene is like a techno song, and then back to gospel, and then it was like this weird. It just struck me as odd.
Yeah. And
then the cinematography too. I didn't really like I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. But like I said, I was like not as engaged with it near the beginning, but it seemed like the whole movie was shot handheld.
A lot of aspects of it, yeah.
Yeah, or at least the bulk of it.
Like that lurking camera kind of point of view, kind of.
Yeah, and I'm just not a big fan of that. I can understand in found footage movies that's what you do, because they're trying to get the feeling of these people aren't professionals. They're just got a camera and they're shooting what they can get. So you get shaky cam and all this stuff. But when it comes to like a regular movie that's not found footage, that kind of irks me when it's too much of that. I like it used sparingly, like give a certain scene immediacy where you're in their face a little bit and then you back up and then you're kind of moving, the camera's moving. So it gives it a little bit of immediacy, but it seemed like the whole movie was shot that way, so that kind of irritated me a little bit, I guess. Overall, at least the end did kind of give me something to watch there as far as the gore factor and a little bit of meat at the end, because I thought I was going to get through a whole another bloodless one, because I believe Crawlers was pretty bloodless, right? Can't remember what. I tried to put that movie out of my mind.
Other than maybe like Alien Blood or something like that, yeah, I think it was pretty much bloodless.
So that was definitely a step up in the gore department. I guess I'll give my star rating and then give the gore score. The star rating, I gave Crawlers a half. I think I'll give this one 1 star. It's better than Crawlers. It had more gore, at least going for it, but overall, it just didn't really engage me that much. Acting load, like I said, the acting was fine, I guess, for the most part. And I can't think of that guy. I should have looked up that guy's name. I don't know who he was, but I've seen him before. The main Pilgrim guy.
We went through that on the episode. I can't remember his name, but yeah, like he had been in a handful of other things.
I've seen him in some. I don't remember what it was, but I thought he was good. Everybody else was fine. I mean, as far as nothing over the top. But I think as far as being a main actor, I thought he did pretty well in that role. And
yeah,
then
I totally
who's
agree.
the builder?
I think I said that. Yeah.
And that's kind of like whenever they were in the stockade or whatever, and he was tending to them or whatever, and then they get out and they kill him with the hammers and stuff or whatever, and they're like,
yeah,
we murdered together.
I think they called him Big Pilgrim, like in the credits, if I remember correctly. Your gore score before you say it. Now we took a guess. Well, no, I guess go ahead and say it. I don't want to influence you. Go ahead and say what your gore score is before I tell you what we guessed.
Okay, and well, like I was saying before, I thought all the gore was pretty much stacked near the end of this movie. There's maybe a few little things that we threw out, but mainly in the last whatever. I don't know if it's half hour or so. Another thing I didn't mention was it felt like this movie was going to conclude about 3 or 4 times before it did.
Yeah.
Because they kept escaping and then they get caught again, escape, get escape. And the way I rated it is how much overall, like through the whole movie, is it like a bloodbath through the whole thing? And then you could probably get an 8, 9, or 10. It's pretty much almost bloodless for at least more than half the movie, and you stick it all at the end. Unless it's some really super hyped up gore, like the Terrifier levels of of gore at the end, since it didn't sustain it throughout. I think I'd give it a 6.
All right, so with that being said, Donnie, you predicted he'd say 5. Will, you and I said he'd say 6. So there we go. We were right. Donnie was wrong.
Yeah.
You suck. I hate you.
I was right.
Oh, yeah,
wrong.
Since I didn't watch the episode yet, I mean, not that we have to put all this in there for the listeners, I don't know, but what were y'all's ratings on the actual movie?
Donnie gave Pilgrim 2 stars. Will and I both gave it 2.5 stars. So once again, just like Will just shit on Hellraiser after we all gave it glowing reviews, you pretty much took a dump on Pilgrim after we gave it fair reviews. So this is the status quo right now on our. I guess I think the conclusion that we draw from this is when we're all together talking about a movie, we think about it differently than we do, maybe watching it solo a little bit later on. You get a different reading of the room. Maybe that's the conclusion. I don't know, but we've got one more movie to talk about here, so we'll see what you guys have to say about this one. Back in episode 85, we talked Silent Night, Deadly Night. Now, Smoke and I were solo on that one. And, I'll give you our scores because, considering y'all probably haven't listened to it, and the kill count afterwards. But, Donnie, I'll start with you. What did you think of Silent Night, Deadly Night, and what's your star rating?
With this one, I thought the pacing was pretty solid. Didn't really lull in any parts, at least to me it didn't. It did have its moments. Now, granted, I had watched it on YouTube or Prime or something. I don't remember specifically what. It did have its moments where the picture quality was like really, really bad.
No, that was on purpose. That was not on purpose, but that was because that was like a later cut, an extended cut kind of thing, where they went back in and they put the old footage in there, but they didn't restore. They didn't completely restore the footage. So it's
man.
Here, this is like off of VHS, just slide it in kind of thing.
This is, it completely took me out of the entire, just kind of took me out. I'm just like, what the fuck?
They added a lot of gore back into the movie doing that. That's why it's.
We've run across similar things on Hulu. Whenever we watch some Hulu videos, sometimes the quality will get blurry and shit.
Yeah.
So I thought it was one of those things. But anyway, it took me out of the experience. I was like, this is bullshit. I thought it had potential to be a little bit more bloody than it was. I was a little disappointed with the gore factor. But, given the time frame and, one of the other, I guess you could say, redeeming factors was titties. But, no, I typically like to give something I would watch again 3 stars. I'm not willing to do that with Silent Night, Deadly Night. For me, it's 2 3/4. I will probably not see this again. But if I do, I mean, whatever.
All right, Will, that leaves us to you. What do you have to say upon watching Silent Night, Deadly Night?
I'm gonna go with 2 1/4. The way that this movie was built was interesting. I guess it was just maybe it was the time frame, the way it was. I guess came to fruition. Something was missing. Like something was just a little bit off for me as far as the story. Like I do like the premise of here's a story of if everything went wrong with the child, but I don't know exactly what they could have done different to make me like kind of grab a hold of this one. Like this one for me was so close to being really good, and it was just missing something. And this is probably one of my worst reviews. Like I can't put my finger on what's missing to make me really dig in on this one. So yeah, that's why I had to go with 2 1/4. Like it's worth watching. Usually the cop out is like, man, if this was made today, this would be really good. But they've remade it, haven't they? And unfortunately, I haven't seen that one either.
Yeah, that one. I think it was just called Silent Night from within the last decade or so, and I haven't seen that one either. But I don't think that one got any glowing reviews.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I've got for my review.
Did you get an official kill count number on that one?
Yeah, I came up with 13 on this one.
With that, I'll say Smoke gave it a gore score of 7, if you were interested, and Smoke gave it 3.5 stars. And I gave it the same as Donnie did, 2 3/4 stars. Although I do say I think it's for different reasons. I think like your 2 3/4 sounded a little bit lower than my 2 3/4. If that makes any sense,
Yeah, it does.
But I think mine was mostly based on the fact that I think as far as if you're going to compare it to Christmas horror movies, Black Christmas is a better movie, and that's kind of what I was comparing it to. Like, in my opinion, Black Christmas is kind of like the standard bar. So if I don't think it's any better than that, it's going to be lower than that. So that's kind of where I was with that.
See, to me, like 3 stars is like the baseline. Would I watch it again?
And I can agree with that. I mean, I can get with that line of thinking for sure. That being said, this one for me, I would definitely watch it again. But to each their own, right? And I get it if you're like, that's probably the only time I'd ever watch it. But either way, so I think we all, I think we kind of all fairly came to the same conclusions in different ways. Other than Smoke has a much higher score.
That's just my history with this movie. Like I've seen it,
that too. Yeah. Sometimes you come in with quote unquote biases that they just kind of show their face in these situations, and I think that's kind of a little bit of that. But either way, so I guess that kind of catches us up to where we are now, because we just talked about the Ginger Dead Man last week. So like we said at the end of last week, just as a teaser before we get into these 2021 movies here in just a second, next week when we come back, we'll be in the year 2022. We'll be in the future, the year 2022, and we're going to be going back to the past for our first one. We're going to be watching an older movie from 1980, New Year's Evil. Just so I don't have to do it at the end, I'll go ahead and give you the synopsis. During a New Year's Eve celebration, a Los Angeles disc jockey receives a phone call saying that when New Year's strikes in each time zone, someone will be murdered, and she will be the last one. So that is what we're going to be watching next week. And I guess before we get into the other stuff here, I'll go ahead and toss out the usual information. You can contact us at allamericanspookshow@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter at AASpookshow. We're on Instagram, Facebook, the Slasher app, TikTok by searching for All American Spook Show. We have a TeePublic page where you can get logo designs, all that cool stuff. Our YouTube channel, Deadline Horror News Live, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. over there on that. And then, of course, we have patreon.com/AASpookshow, where when you become a patron, $1, $3, we have many levels on up. We have a monthly poll where you can vote for a movie that we're going to be watching the following month. This month, at the end of the month, so that will be this Friday night at midnight, New Year's Eve. this Friday night at midnight, or I should say 11:59 p.m., the poll will close. So New Year's Eve, this month's poll for what we're going to be watching on in January is for 3 canon movies. So it's X-Ray, a.k.a. Hospital Massacre, 10 to Midnight, and Enter the Ninja. Those are your 3 choices. So if you go over to patreon.com/AASpookshow, you can vote in that poll. I think it's starting at the $3 level where you can actually vote. So if you want your voice to be heard, or have an influence on what we watch next month, that's where you can do it. And of course, you get early access to episodes and bonus video minisodes, Library of the Professor segment we do every Tuesday. All that's there on patreon.com/AASpookshow. All right, so we had to make a small little edit that you might notice there. Will had to go back on assignment, so he couldn't join us for the rest of this. But he wanted to say that he's only seen 3 horror movies in the year 2021, and those were the 3 that we watched here for the podcast: The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, Caveat, and Halloween Kills. So if you want to hear his and everyone else's thoughts on those 3 movies, where we go in depth on them, those episodes are available in the archives. And the latest one was Halloween Kills. Actually, Caveat was only less than a month before that. So, and Conjuring Devil Made Me Do It, we did that one literally right after it came out. So you have to go back to June of this year for that one. But onward and upward, I'm still joined here with Donnie and the Professor, and we're going to be talking about not only the 2021, mostly the 2021 horror movies that we watched, but I'll run down a brief list of some of the other ones that maybe I'm sure Donnie watched a couple that I didn't, and so on, with Smoke and everything. So we'll kind of compare our list, talk about those briefly, and just kind of give you a brief or a little bit of an overview about what horror was in 2021. I guess I'll start off by going down a list. Now, look, I'm not going to read every horror movie that came out in 2021 because, frankly, there's probably some that we'll never get to or ever speak of. Like some really low budget, maybe some stuff that was released in other countries and stuff that we can't have access to, stuff like that. But we'll mention some of the highlights and stuff, and then we'll go into not only the ones that we watched, but which ones we felt were the best of the year of the ones that we watched. Obviously, we can't comment too much on the ones that we haven't watched, but of the ones we watched, which ones did we think were kind of the best of the year? So we'll kind of hit that towards the end. But at first here, I'll go through a little bit of a list that I have here, and these aren't in this particular list. Just happens to be in alphabetical order, but this is a more briefer list than I have another one that's thicker. So I'll just run through this one real quick. Of some movies that came out this year: Antlers, directed by Scott Cooper. Army of the Dead, that was Zack Snyder's latest on Netflix. See, there's these 2 movies. I'm assuming these. Okay, one's from Pakistan, one's from India, and these are both comedy horrors. One's called Boot Bangla, and another one's called Buliyaha 2. Look, they're on the list, so I'm reading them, okay? Candyman, that was the remake that came out earlier this year, directed by Nia DaCosta. Of course, we mentioned The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. There were 3 Fear Street movies that came out on Netflix. I think they were a week or so apart when they released them. But they all kind of formed together to make one gigantic movie, really. But there was Fear Street Part 1, 1994, Fear Street Part 2, 1978, and then Fear Street Part 3, 1666. Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin, that was the latest in the Paranormal Activity series. I'm not even sure. I lost track of how many of those there are. There's at least, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those things? I can't remember.
I want to say at least 6.
Yeah. Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Now, that one was fairly recent. We've kept up with that on the box office numbers. I think it's in its 3rd or 4th week in the box office as of this recording. The movie Son, S-O-N, directed by Ivan Kavanaugh. Spiral from the Book of Saw, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. The Forever Purge, that's another one where I think there's 4 or 5 of those Purge movies, right? That one was directed by Everardo Gout. The Night House, directed by David Bruckner. The Unholy, that one's got Jeffrey Dean Morgan in it.
Yep.
And William Sadler, Carrie Elwes, a couple others. There's Someone Inside Your House, directed by Patrick Bryce. Werewolves Within, directed by Josh Rubin. Willy's Wonderland, that's the Nicolas Cage trapped inside of a... how would you describe that one, Donnie? It's like he's trapped inside of a
showbiz pizza place or Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's trapped inside, and these fucking animatronics are killing people. And another one on this list, Zombie Ready. That's an Indian movie. I got another list here that goes a little bit deeper. I'll just run through some of the names here. This one was very recent. Silent Night. I think that one literally came out at the beginning of December. Last Night in Soho. The Whole Truth. Old. That was the latest M. Night Shyamalan movie. Titane, I think is how you say it. Titane.
Sure.
It's either Titane or Titani. I'm not sure. Lamb, of course, that was an A24 directed by Valdemar Johansson. We'll get into that here in a second. That one was odd, to say the least. Malignant, which we will be talking about here in coming up in a few weeks in January. Coming Home in the Dark. The Black Phone, which that's directed by Scott Derrickson and stars Ethan Hawke. That one looks, I don't know if you guys have seen the trailers for that, but that looks pretty interesting. Chiori, Agnes, Black Friday, Spiral from the Book of Saw, Antlers, The Innocents, Death Valley, The Advent Calendar. Now that's one that we need to add to the old Christmas horror list. I think that one's available on Shudder, last I checked. Don't Breathe 2, Hypnotic, The Deep House. We talked about that one briefly on one of those videos that we did where that's like an underwater haunted house flick. So if nothing else, that sounds interesting, right? Yeah. Escape Room Tournament of Champions. That was the second of the Escape Room, the sequel to Escape Room. Night Teeth, The Trip, We Need to Do Something, Wrong Turn. Now that was a kind of a reboot of the Wrong Turn franchise because I think there was seriously like 5 or 6 of those. The Medium, Red Snow, Aftermath, Demonic, The Addams Family 2. I guess that kind of counts, right? Even though it's not necessarily horror, it's a horror theme, so we'll go with it. There's Someone Inside Your House, No One Gets Out Alive, Blood of Red Sky, Things Heard and Seen, Motherly, The Scary of 61st. I've never heard of that one. Censor, A House on the Bayou, The Beta Test. I mean, like, the list goes on. Honestly, like, this particular list I have here, like, literally has over 1,000 titles that I guess they kind of qualify in one way or another as a horror movie. I'm not going to go down this entire list, but you get the picture. Those are probably some of the bigger ones, and we'll name off a handful more here as we go through the list. Now, I guess, since I'm not just sitting here doing all the talking, Donnie, I'll kind of toss to you, and you go through your list, and then we'll kind of chime in where, like if I've seen it or not. I'll let you go first.
All of those titles that you mentioned, I say all of them, there's probably, you've already mentioned them, so I'm not going to, I did have probably, about 8 of those on my list. And I believe we've already talked about Halloween Kills. Mm-hmm. So that was, that was one. There was also Quiet Place 2. I don't know if that was discussed, but that was on my list.
I never got a chance to see that one.
Yeah. I recommend it. Yeah, I'd say thumbs up.
Yeah, I saw a Quiet Place 2 as well. Yeah, echo Donnie's sentiments. It's definitely worth seeing, especially if you like the first one.
I was about to say, now how does it compare as far as thumbs up, thumbs down to the first one?
Well, I think it. If you like the first one, I'm sure you'll like this one. But it's one of those movies where the first one is it has this initial impact when you watch it. The whole concept of having to stay quiet and everything, and then so you already know that world when you come into this one. Yeah, but exactly. That being said, it's still very good. Yeah,
well said. But yeah, I would recommend both.
Yeah, well, you know how the first one, they don't show stuff at first, right? They're kind of like, you get the concept after a while of having to stay quiet, or these things that you don't really see that well for a little bit will get you or whatever. That they don't have to at least worry about it with the second movie. They've already established. You already know what the creatures look like by the time you get to the end of the first movie, so they didn't really have to worry about not showing them. So you get to see some pretty cool creature effects, I guess.
I guess kind of rounding out my list, Tentacles, which I believe was on Hulu. I kind of like jumping kind of back on, mentioning Hulu. I did watch that bite-sized Halloween little feature that they had.
Yeah, I did watch some of those. Well, I mean, hell, they're so fast, I probably watched 15 of them in 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was it was interesting. But Skull the Mask, we were talking about this offline a little bit.
That one I saw, and that is gory as shit.
It's violent.
Yeah. Now that is
I need to watch
that one's in Spanish if I remember correctly, right? It's been a while since I watched it, but
and I'm not really one for subtitles because I don't like to read. But I mean, you want me to lie to you?
Yeah.
No. So But yeah, like it still wasn't that bad though. Like just be wary if you're a subtitle hater.
Yeah.
I mean, you could turn it off, but you're not gonna understand what the fuck's going on. But honestly, with that movie, you don't really. It's not necessary.
I mean, there is a story to it, but yeah, it's not like it's entirely. You'd probably be able to read between the lines in that one.
You're like, oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But no, The Stylist.
That's one of those where I saw that one as well, and that's one where it's like it's not gory all the time, but when it's gory, it's like, oh, damn, it's like skin crawling type stuff, Like,
yeah, it's over the head. Psycho Gorman, which I thought was hilarious. Completely surprised. I was not expecting much. I had heard a whole lot of rave reviews, but then again, they said the same thing about Malignant. But we will get into that as well. But no, so yeah, Psycho Gorman, huge thumbs up. I would absolutely recommend that one. The Ringmaster, which actually when I we were going over the different movies, I had went to a page that had like the movie posters. I was like, yeah, I remember seeing that. I can't tell you heads or tails whether that was good or not, whether I recommend it. I remember the thumbnail. I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that. I cannot recall if it's good or not. It was not memorable, I'll say. Unicorn, which that's another thing. I seem to recall that there was a guy that went to he was like an unwitting or an unwilling participant in he went to a sex party, but he was an unwilling participant in this,
Then you shouldn't be going to a sex party.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, Ringmaster, Unicorn, and the final mention on my list is Escape the Undertaker, which it's one of those interactive horror, kind of. It's an experience. I would say I would give it a thumbs up just because it's a different experience.
It's time to refresh. For your convenience, we have an attractive refreshment stand with a parade of items to tempt your taste. Hot buttered popcorn, golden good and fresh from the popper. Your favorite candies, wholesome and rich and full of flavor. Ice cream and other good things to eat. Plus, ice cold Coca-Cola. So bright, so bracing, with a taste and tingle all its own.
What about you, Smoke? You want to run down your list?
Yeah, I'll start with one you had mentioned in the open of the show. I guess was Antlers. Did either of y'all? That wasn't on your list. You didn't see that one, right, Donnie?
I did not. No.
No, I didn't get a chance to see that one yet.
Yeah, that one. Me and my wife saw that in the theater. Here's my thing with that is that going into that movie, I already expected something out of it because I love folklore when it has to do with this one specifically had to do with the Wendigo, which is a Native American folk tale.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely had some preconceived. Like, I was hoping it was going to be great because there hasn't really been any really good Wendigo movies. There's been some TV episodes here and there of things that have featured the Wendigo. Like even X-Files element of the Wendigo in one of the episodes, not like full on with the antlers and all that stuff. It's featured in a couple of like a really low budget movie that just wasn't pretty terrible. So I had a lot of expectations that I hoped it would meet, and it didn't quite live up to those, but it was better than some of that other prior Wendigo movie I was talking about from, I can't remember what year that was, 90 something, I believe, or early 2000s. It was better than that one, but it still didn't impress me a whole lot. So, I mean, I would say give it a watch, especially if you have no idea what the Wendigo is or anything, you might enjoy it more than if you know the story of the folklore around it. And if you do know the folklore around it, I still say it's worth at least one watch, not necessarily one to own or so. It was fun to see in the theater. So I don't know if anybody's playing it still in the theater, but if they are, like I say, watch it once. And if you don't know anything about Wendigo, then you might enjoy it more. Another one, Spiral. Of course, we talked about that. I know you said you saw it, Josh.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are like they tried to freshen it up with some new faces, or at least some recognizable faces in Chris Rock and Samuel Jackson. But
yeah, Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah,
it just fell flat to me. Like
Me too.
I'm
Me too.
I'm not saying I hated it. I'm definitely not going to say I loved it. It just kind of exists. It's if you like Saw, you'll probably like it enough. It kind of is what it is. And moving on. Now, we actually talked about it briefly, I think on Deadline Horror News last week, that they're actually, it sounds like they're going forward probably with another one. So we'll see where it goes from here. But, as far as that one's concerned, if you like the Saw movies, you should probably watch it once, and that's probably about as many times as you'd want to watch it, just once. And I watched it.
True, and as we talked about before, I don't know if we talked about it on the show before or not, but I'm not the hugest Saw movie fan, and I haven't even seen all of them. I've seen at least the first three, and this one.
I mean, let's face it. Past the first one, really, if you think about it, you're probably really only watching the Saw movies for the inventive, fucked up ways to kill people, right?
Yeah, the kills.
Yeah, you just want to see what kind of contraption they come up with next. So that's kind of what that series has become.
Beyond that, Malignant. Now, here's my thing. And I forget what we talk about sometimes on the show and what we don't. I attempted to watch it, and it was after I got off work, and I made it through, I don't remember, maybe the first 15, 20 minutes or so, and then I fell asleep because I was tired as shit. So I need to get back to watching that one, and I know at some point very soon we'll be doing that on the podcast.
Matter of fact, that is 3 weeks from today, on January 17th, we will be watching or talking Malignant. You will have to finally sit down and watch it by then.
Yes. Beyond that, there was, of course, Halloween Kills.
Yeah, we talked about that one on. I'm blanking on what episode that was, but that was back like right after it came out, so that was like mid-October.
Next up would be Old, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Did you see that one, Josh?
No, it's one I did not get around to.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, did you see, what was the one with the, right before that one? I guess the last movie you made before with the kids and the grandparents. Yeah, I'm blanking on the name of that movie.
Was it called The Visit, I think?
Yes, The Visit.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Did you, either of y'all see that one?
No, still haven't watched that one either.
Yeah.
That one was a little bit more. I like that one a little bit better, say, than Old. Old wasn't terrible. Again, it was one of those I kind of put in there with Antlers as far as not for the storyline or theme or anything, but just the fact of like you could see it once. Not the greatest M. Night Shyamalan movie, certainly not the worst, but I think it's worth at least one watch for me, anyways. I mean, unless you're like a huge M. Night Shyamalan movie, then maybe you like it more. So, but I just thought it was good, but not great. And I like The Visit a little bit better. Lamb, though. Now, Lamb, you saw Lamb, right, Josh?
Yes.
Yeah. That movie, I love that movie though. I knew it was an A24 film. I knew it was gonna, just judging even before I even saw the trailer or anything. Just a movie called Lamb coming from A24. It's gonna be weird. And then you see the trailer, and yep, you're like, yeah, it's definitely gonna be weird. And then you go to see it, and yep, it was weird.
Yeah, it was weird. All right.
It was. Yeah.
The only thing I can say for myself is that like it's not that I didn't like it. I didn't love it, but it's not like I didn't like it. It's just that certain aspects of it aggravated me, and those are things that I can't get into on here because it's too spoilery. So maybe, a lot of what I got to say about it's going to have to wait until we get to it. But that one, I almost dread the day we do that one because it's going to be a hard one to explain.
It's. I mean, I don't know that we've done any A24 movies, have we? Pretty sure we haven't.
I think so.
Yeah, pretty much any A24 movie we tackle is going to not be just going to be
us talking
about our experience with the movie rather than. I mean, it's going to be hard just to even get a clear plot, of like just going through the movie from point A to point B.
Look, there's a plot in this movie, and it makes sense enough. It's not one of those like plotless type of movies. It's just that a lot of the things that happen with it in the movie, kind of like what the hell, like to me, So like. Yeah, you just need to see it for yourself, and then eventually we'll get to it. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. I enjoyed it enough, and I enjoyed it enough to watch it at least one more time for the show. So I'll give it that.
I love the setting. I love it. It's set in Iceland, and it's in Icelandic, so with the English subtitle.
Yep.
And another aspect about it I love. But and it's A24, so if you know what A24 is and you like A24 movies, you'll probably like this one at least enough to. Get enjoyment out of it. If you've seen an A24 movie and you got up at the end and said, "What the hell was this shit?" then you probably won't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that going on because again, me and my wife saw this in the theater, as we've seen many A24 movies, and many times after the credit rolls, people are just looking around at each other bewildered, like, what the hell is this we just watched? That right there is part of the fun of going to an A24 movie for me.
Just laughing at all the rookies.
When the lights come back on. Yeah. Next up, I had In the Earth. That one was kind of an under-the-radar movie. I mean, for a lot of people. Even for me, like, I didn't really know much about it going into it. And that one pleasantly surprised me. I would recommend that one for sure. I know you didn't have that on your list, did you, Donnie?
No.
No, me either.
No. You didn't see that one either, Josh? Yeah.
Nope.
That one, I would recommend it for anybody to. It's different. It's definitely. I mean, it's not so different that it's. Again, it's got a plot and everything, but it's just not predictable necessarily in any way. So, and it was cool seeing that in the theater because it had a interesting sound design. It definitely used sound to. I mean, one of the plots in the movie is sound. Like, these speakers are set up in the forest and they're set to certain frequencies and tones and whatnot, and they definitely used that to great effect with the surround sound in the theater. Beyond that, Last Night in Soho. That was Edgar Wright.
Yeah, it was Edgar. I really wanted to see that one. I haven't got a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah, same.
That one, I enjoyed that one too. I would definitely recommend that one as well. So, yeah,
about it.
Yeah, that's another one we saw in the theater. Most of these I saw in the theater. In fact, it's probably only a small percentage that watched on Netflix or streaming or whatever. Most of these did see in the theater, and that was another good one. Good theater experience. Great cinematography. Story was good. Definitely keeps you engaged. It's one of those that I kind of look forward to watching again because there's a lot of subtleties and things going on with it that I'm sure I missed some stuff in there. The Army of the Dead. That was one that I thought was going to get maybe a theatrical release. That's one that should have maybe gotten a theatrical release.
I think it actually did get like a small theatrical release, if I'm not mistaken, because it was released on Netflix, but I think they actually did release it in theaters like a week or so beforehand, and it played, for a couple weeks or something like that.
Yeah, and I know it didn't play where I'm at. I'm out with kind of, I don't have a very huge city. I mean, Charlotte, where y'all are, is the closest one to me, and I know it didn't play in Columbia or anywhere around here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But
I don't know how wide of a release it was, but I'm almost positive there was some type of release with that.
Yeah, I do remember hearing something about it, but I don't know how limited it was, but I know it was too limited to where it didn't play in Columbia, and sometimes they do get limited releases in Columbia, but not that one. But I enjoyed it. You saw it, right, Josh?
Yep. Donnie, did you see that one? I don't remember if you said that or not.
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't on my list because I didn't get to finish my list.
But you did see it.
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, like, not as much as, like, obviously his remake of Dawn of the Dead. Like, that's probably if that's not my favorite movie he's ever done, it's right there, like, number 2 or 3 or something. But that being said, I mean, I'm interested to see where it goes because it's clearly the beginning of something, right? Like, there's already been another prequel movie that came out on Netflix.
Yeah, I didn't see that one yet.
Yeah, that one's on Netflix, and then there is going to be a sequel to it. So, like, it's the beginning of, like, his own little, like, kind of zombie universe thing going on there. So, there was a lot of interesting stuff in that movie that, I'd like to see more of it. So, if nothing else, it was successful in that. If anything, it was probably a bit too long, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would say that that's one of the things that kind of typically we kind of bristle at anything that's right a little over 2 hours because my attention wanes after a bit.
I tend to look at movies like I start getting more critical the longer they are, simply because like I start thinking, like, I start looking back and say, well, you could have cut that out and that out and that out, and then I just kind of get hung up in that in my mind, like, all right, there's at least 30 minutes of shit you could have cut out of this movie, and then I can't move past it, I just know how I operate, so.
And that movie, I think I went and looked on IMDb in the credits later just to see, but it reminded me very much of this comic book miniseries that I read back in, or I guess it was published back in 2000, 10, 11, 12. It was called Remain. I believe IDW, I want to say, that publisher, and that Steve Niles might have had something to do with it.
Okay.
But it was set in Las Vegas, and a lot of the things, not necessarily the exact events that were happening in Army of the Dead, but just the zombies in Vegas type thing and whatnot. It's very reminiscent of that. So it would be hard pressed for me to believe that the whoever wrote Army of the Dead hadn't maybe read the Remains series or whatever. Otherwise, it would just be a complete weird coincidence. But maybe so. At any rate, I'd recommend that too. Anybody who's never read that Remains series. I don't know what it's. I got the original comics. I don't know if it's on some sort of comic app or not. But so beyond that, next is Quiet. Well, we talked about Quiet Place 2 on Donnie's list.
Yep.
So we've already pretty much covered that one. The Night House. That was another one I saw in the theater. Another one that I saw the trailer and was hoping for more than what it delivered, I guess. And I thought it started out really, really good. It had potential, and then it took this turn where I'm like, I wish they hadn't done that. I wish they had done it the way I was thinking it was going to play out in my head. I don't know. That one personally for me, I wouldn't really. Did either of y'all see that one?
No, I didn't get a chance to see that one yet.
I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to judge what would be. I mean, it's not a terrible movie. It's just I thought it had so much more potential than what it was. So maybe it's worth one viewing, and other people might like it a lot better than I did. But for me, I'll probably, unless we do it on the show, I probably won't ever get around to watching that one.
So next week, The Night House.
The Night House.
Ah, son of a bitch.
No, I mean, I do need to. I'd watch it again to reassess it, and but I won't do that unless we do it on the show at some point.
And sometimes we talked about that, dozens of times. Like sometimes you just need to step away from something for a while and revisit it. And you might think differently about it. So who knows, right?
Yeah, like I said, that classic case for me was the 2018 Halloween movie.
Yeah. Did you have any more on your list?
Resident Evil.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. What do you think of it?
I haven't been the hugest fan of the Resident Evil movies franchise. I saw the first one, I liked the first one, and I've seen some of the others. I haven't seen all of them.
Now, I don't think it really ties into that, though, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I know it's a prequel of sorts, but
movies at all. In fact, it's more like the game
than
previous movies were.
Yeah, that's what I understood going into it. Yeah,
and I thought that was cool because I as far as gameplay goes, I've only ever played, not ever played, but extensively played the first two Resident Evil games. The other ones I've played here and there, but the first one, and specifically the second game, I played that one beginning to end. I finished it like 2 or 3 times. Like, I loved that game when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of scenes from those 2 games that were like cutscenes that they shot in the movie, and you could tell, like, especially the first game when they first show the zombie and he's like over a body and he's like eating on the body and he turns towards the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, that was shot just like the cutscene from the first game.
Nice.
So that's cool. And it had some gore in it. It wasn't maybe, not as gory as I would like for it to have been, but it didn't skimp on the gore by any means.
Cool.
I enjoyed it more than prior Resident Evil movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it was closer to the game. So yeah, Godzilla versus Kong. What did you think of that one?
Man, I watched that right after it came out, and that was like towards the that was what? God, that was like March, April, something like that. So honestly, I've kind of forgotten a little bit about it. I remember liking it though, like, and I think it kind of went pretty much the way I figured it would go, like in terms of like the way that would turn out. I think I'd kind of predicted that in my mind, but without giving away any spoilers here for those that haven't seen it. But
yeah, I was about to say something, but I'm like, nah, I guess I won't mention it. I mean, there's people, you might not want to. I knew something that was going to happen or something that was going to pop up in my face.
Yeah.
And that came to be, and I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And that was cool. Now, I thought it was, the only thing is a CG. Any movie that comes out like this, that's a monster movie, is going to be a CG fest.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That is what it is. I grew up with the man in the monster suit movies, and I love that. But of course, you can't do that these days. I mean, people. Can you imagine if they made that movie now?
People would just be laughing their ass off.
Monster Tokyo or something.
I've shown my 10-year-old son just like a picture of, like some of the old ones, like the first time they fought and all that, and he's just like, "What is that?" And he just laughs. So like, yeah, if they try to do that now, it would just get laughed out the door.
Yeah, there was. I can't remember if it was Godzilla versus. King Kong versus Godzilla. I think that's how the first movie was called, right? The original 60s one. I can't remember if it's in there, and I think it is. There's a scene where Godzilla does I guess you call it a drop kick, tail slide, where he slides on his tail all the way, like about a football field length.
Yeah.
And kicks King Kong, I believe it's in that one.
Yeah. That's a
I mean, there's something kitschy and kitsch and cheesy about all that, and I love that. But yeah, it won't fly these days, of course.
No.
So
But yeah,
CG is the only way they're going to.
as far as this one was concerned, I remember enjoying it. I mean, it's probably one I'll go back and watch one of these days, and I'll probably appreciate it a little bit more later down the road, like we just said. But yeah, I remember enjoying it.
And I think that's actually I had one more on this list, and I hesitate to even mention it because I don't even remember watching it. A classic horror story, and it was a foreign film, and I believe it was. I want to say it's French, but could be wrong. But I don't remember. I don't remember anything other than the title of it.
Yeah, you got me. I didn't watch that one, so I'm completely off the reservation on that one.
If I recommend it or not,
yeah.
Obviously, I don't remember.
It's a movie. Go watch it and decide it for yourself, I guess. My list, I've got some that we've already mentioned, some that we haven't. Willy's Wonderland, we talked about that. Shadow in the Cloud. Now that one's pretty good. It's like a World War II. What's the old classic Twilight Zone episode where there's like a gremlin on the wing? William Shatner episode. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, Nightmare at 20,000 feet, or Nightmare 30.
Yeah, that's basically what this movie is, in a nutshell. That's basically take that premise and put it in World War II and go. Honestly, I had like pretty much no expectations going into it, and I enjoyed it. So I would recommend watching it. I would recommend seeking it out and checking it out. Godzilla vs. Kong, like we said, Army of the Dead. Skull the Mask, very gory. We talked about that. Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. And of course, Halloween Kills and Caveat. We did all three of those. Now, we haven't talked about Caveat. Neither of you guys mentioned that, but that was a 2021 movie. Yeah. We did that one back in episode 75. I also saw the movie Awake. I think that one was on Netflix. I can't quite remember. But basically, the premise of that one is basically every person on Earth lost the ability to go to sleep. That's your premise. So it gets pretty nutty. By it's one of those movies where like the situation just devolves. The closer you get to the end of the movie, it's like you start off in a sane place and then it just gets crazier and crazier. So I would recommend it. Saint Maud. Now that's an A24, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I've been wanting to watch that one. It's been on my radar and haven't got around to it yet.
Yeah. All I can say is weird. I'll say that. That's a hard one to describe. So I'm not even going to try here, and I'm sure we'll have to. It's like Lamb in a lot of ways. Like hard one to describe. You just need to kind of witness it for yourself. And whenever we get to those on the Spook Show, it's going to be interesting. A movie called The Night. That one's another fucking head trip type of movie where you think you know the situation, what's going on, but you have no idea kind of movie. I think that one was on Hulu, and I believe so was The Vigil. I watched that one. That one's kind of like, I guess in the Jewish community, they have, I can't remember what they call it, but basically like when someone dies, someone has to sit in the house like overnight with the person, I guess kind of making sure no demons attack them in the middle of the night, something along those lines. And basically this guy, there's a guy that comes in and has to sit vigil over the dead person, until, the person can move on to the next side the next morning or something like that. And, so you can imagine a horror movie based on that and go. Pretty good. Not bad. Son, S-O-N, we talked about that briefly, but I would highly recommend that. Smoke, I think that has your sensibilities about it. I think you would enjoy that for sure. Malignant we'll get to in a few weeks. Come True. Now that one I believe, as we speak, was on Hulu. That's another one. Once again, hard to explain, really weird. It's like dreamscape type stuff. Just really weird. But good. Well done. Definitely well done. Looks cool. Go check it out. The Unholy, that one has Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and we spoke briefly earlier. That one's kind of, if you're that person that just likes to watch a horror movie to watch it, there you go. Here's a movie. I wouldn't highly recommend it or anything, but it was all right. I mean, it's well done enough, right? It's just kind of like one of those mainstream type of horror movies where there's a formula and you kind of figure out pretty quick what the hell's going on here. So, it doesn't really hold much mystery, as you're watching it. So it's okay. Held. That one's kind of, someone is held like in a house against their will, and you're trying to figure out, like, you think one person's behind it and it turns out it's someone else. So it's kind of a whodunit kind of thing. who's really behind the curtain kind of movie. So it's another one of those. The Stylist we talked about. Bloodthirsty. Now that's an interesting take. I don't want to go too deep into spoilery territory. I'll just say it could be fodder for if we do the Summer of the Wolf again. I'll just say that. I would recommend it. All through those Fear Street movies we spoke about earlier, watched all of those. Like I said, I think those are kind of best seen almost as like an entire thing. Like you need to watch all three kind of back to back because they directly tie together, like almost like seamlessly. So you need to watch all three of those. It's like one gigantic movie. The Boy Behind the Door. Now that one I think was like a Shudder exclusive, if I'm not mistaken. That's about a couple of kids that get kidnapped and they basically have to fight their way out of it. That one's pretty good. Blood Red Sky, which was one that was on Netflix, at least when I watched it. One, the premise on that one is basically like vampire on an airplane. So think about how fucked up that would be, and go. Just to briefly summarize what that movie is. So that one's pretty interesting. It's a tad long, but it's still I would recommend it. It was pretty good. That reboot.
They find I'm tired of these motherfucking vampires on this motherfucking.
Yeah. Think of that, except vampires. Yeah, pretty much snakes on a plane, but vampires. And like I said, it's as fucked up of a scenario as you can imagine. If a vampire got loose on a plane, it's pretty fucked up. Wrong Turn, that reboot of basically they kind of go, and I think it was like the original writer or director or something like that, from the original Wrong Turn movie back 15, 20 years ago, that came back for this, and basically it's kind of a new spin on the same premise. A group of teenagers go hiking in the woods and they shouldn't have kind of thing, and they get into some shit, but it's told in a different way than those movies. It's not like your inbred redneck cannibal type stuff. It's a different twist. It's actually pretty good. I would recommend it. Gaia, which I actually just watched that one like about a week or so ago as we're recording this. Smoke, that's in your wheelhouse for sure. And trust me. And Spiral, like we talked about, Book of Saul, that was literally the most recent one I watched right before, because I'd been putting that one off. Like I wanted to see it, but I was like, I hadn't heard many glowing reviews about it, so I was kind of holding off. So I finally watched it, literally a couple of days ago. So there's that. And I actually started watching Candyman too. I don't know if we really talked about that in this episode too much, but that was a reboot of Candyman that came out. I started watching that but didn't finish it, so I can't really say much on that one yet. But I'll finish watching that and report back at some point. But so I guess we'll kind of wrap it up here with there is a top 40 list on Rotten Tomatoes. So these are the highest rated horror movies of 2021 according to Rotten Tomatoes, their tomato meter score. I'm not going to go through all 40, but I'll go through the top 15, since some of them we've mentioned and some we haven't. Number 15, The Night House. So there you go, Smoke. It's number 15 on the list. Number 14, Violation. That wasn't one we mentioned, so interesting. Fear Street Part 2, 1978 is at number 13. Number 12, Till Death. That one's got Megan Fox in it.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that.
Yeah. Number 11, Censor.
Oh, yeah. I have heard about that one.
Yeah. I've heard good things about it. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard interesting things. But that's number 11 on Rotten Tomatoes list. All right, so now the top 10. Number 10, The Stylist. With I didn't read the other scores, but I'll start reading the scores with this one. With a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, The Stylist. Number 9, with a 90%, The Queen of Black Magic. And that says, at least according to this, it's a Shudder original. So that looks interesting. Number 8, Fear Street Part 3, 1666, with a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Number 7, A Quiet Place Part 2, 91%. Number 6, Psycho Gorman, with a 92%. Now, Donnie, you said you saw that one, right?
I did, yeah.
That one's definitely one I want to get around to. The critics' consensus: over the top and enthusiastically strange, Psycho Gorman delivers all the cheesy midnight movie goodness promised by its title.
Oh, yeah. It's a great song.
I want to check it out. All right, now we get to the top 5. Number 5, with 93%, Lucky. That also says a Shudder original. Number 4.
About the didn't we mention something about a dog and a baby like trying to eat each other, and it was called Lucky?
Yeah, I don't think it is that, but based on the quick glance I see here, but yeah. Number 4, Slacks, SLAXX, with a 96%. I'm just going to read the little synopsis here just because what the hell. A possessed pair of blue jeans is brought to life to punish the unscrupulous practices of a trendy clothing company. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, what the hell? That's number 4 on Rotten Tomatoes, Best Horror of 2021. Number 3 was the, I guess, previously lost and restored 46-year-old classic, The Amusement Park by George A. Romero. That was one that we had intended to get to last summer when it was
Right.
released, but we never got around to it because we switched gears and did the Summer of the Wolf series. But maybe that's one that we need to go back and check out. I never got around to watching it.
Me either.
So that was number 3. Number 2, the one that I mentioned earlier that I watched. I don't know if I'd recommend it this high, but it was pretty well done. The Boy Behind the Door with a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Hmm.
And then number 1, My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. Now, that's like one of those old, long-ass Giallo titles right there, if I've never heard it.
Yeah, like your vice is a closed door, and only I have the key.
Yeah. But My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. That's number 1 on according to Rotten Tomatoes, and that was directed by Jonathan Cuartas, and that's got a 98%. It's hard to beat that, no doubt about that. So that's your top 15 over on Rotten Tomatoes. I figured I'd just kind of throw that in at the end there, just so you kind of have a gauge of what you may want to watch, and a couple other that we didn't mention that are on the list. I'll just kind of glance through real fast. The Djinn, Jacob's Wife, that one has Barbara Crampton in it. Let's see, Night Books, The Power, Boys from County Hell. A lot of these are Shudder movies, by the way.
Yeah, that add that to my list. I do remember. Yeah, me and Kenny watched that.
Yeah. The Columnist. There's In the Earth. Smoke, you mentioned that one. That's number 30. That's number 30 on this list. Shadow in the Cloud, Malignant, Meander, Sound of Violence, The Blazing World, and then actually number 40 is Willy's Wonderland. So that kind of rounds out the top 40 there. I kind of skipped around, but yeah, you get the point. So tons of really good movies. Some that we watched and talked about here. A lot that we didn't. I mean, like, dude, some of these lists are pretty damn thick. As far as like, here's just a bunch of damn movies. So we obviously highly recommend the ones that we talked about here, and of course there's a handful that we need to get around to. And the important thing to note is that we will be getting around to one of them in 3 weeks when we watch Malignant on episode 91. But coming up next week, before we get to all that, we're going to be watching New Year's Evil, and then the week after that will be episode 90, our first Spook Show Rewind. We'll go all the way back to episode 1 where we're going to be talking about Reanimator. So that's the next couple weeks, and then Malignant. So everything's kind of laid out for you, so you know what's coming up for the new year. So I guess that's all we need to say about 2021. That'll put a bow on it, and next week when we do New Year's Evil, that will be our first show of 2022. So it's been a great year. Donnie, we brought you on this year, so looking forward to even bigger and better things in 2022. So from all of us, of course, Will, Donnie, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All-American Spook Show Horror Podcast. From all of us here on the Spook Show, we wish you all happy holidays and a happy New Year's. And we will talk to you next week.
As you leave the theater, folks, please be careful. Don't let this happen to your car. Be sure to remove the speaker before you leave. If you should accidentally pull a speaker loose, please turn it in at our snack bar or box office. Thank you.